Okay, how to throw on the wheel tutorial for you guys. So first thing, we've got our wheel, we have it turned on, we have a bat. There are two sides to the bat. There's smooth and then rough. You want rough side up. It's like baby Velcro for the clay, so it has something to grab onto. You're also going to want a bucket of water. Warm's nice just because we live in Wisconsin and it's cold. You're going to want a sponge. You're going to want later on a tool that has a 45-degree angle because you're going to hold it this way, not necessarily this way, but this could be wood, plastic, whatever you have on hand. You're also going to want a needle, or sometimes known as a pin tool. Yes, they're very sharp, so be careful. You may or may not need to use a rib, whether it's a flexible metal rib or a rubber rib. And then lastly, you're going to want a wire tool for when we're done throwing. We can cut this off the bat and let it dry so that we can trim a foot later. So I'm starting with about a pound of clay or so. That's a good size for decent sized coffee mug. What I'm going to do first, get the bat just damp, not too wet at all, then slam it in the middle. That wasn't in the middle. Slam it in the middle. There we go. So next step is, you'll notice I scrape my hands off a lot, and I usually throw with a sponge in my hand. Not always, but most potters will use a little bit of water very often, depending on the type of clay, what you're making, how long you're going to be working with it, all that kind of stuff. Clay loves compression, which you'll find out later, but clay doesn't always like water, because clay will turn into this nasty stuff, slip, and you don't need this yet. So here we go. When you center, this is, for starting, the hardest part. You're going to put a lot of pressure towards the center very quickly. My wheel is going faster than I would when I pull up the sides, but it's not crawling so slow that I'm not going to get anywhere. My hands are going to try and keep time with the speed of the wheel. So I'm going to make sure I have enough water so it's kind of slippery, and all I'm doing is squeezing very hard towards the center so my clay has nowhere else to go but up. And you make unicorn horn, traffic cone, whatever you want to call it. It's easier to center something skinny than something fat. So I'm going to do this a little bit more, but I'm going to take the knife edge of my hand and dig this underneath. Now, on a piece this size, I don't normally cone it this tall. I'm doing this to show you guys that's what it can look like. Scrape my hands off. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be pushing this down. Since I'm at a sit-down wheel, I'm always anchoring my arms on my legs. If you're at a stand-up wheel, sometimes you can anchor them on the pan, just to keep yourself steady. So when we smash this back down to get this more into center, my left hand's going to push down on top of this unicorn horn. My right hand is going to push in towards the center, so it's going away from myself, but towards the middle of the clay. And we're going to do that simultaneously. All the while, I'm squeezing a little bit of water out, just so it's slippery enough that it glides. And when you take your hands away, there's your little mini hockey puck, cheese wheel, whatever you want to call it. And that's centered. So from here, now we're going to open up the piece. First I'm going to flatten this on the top so I make a fist. Take my left hand, kind of push it in towards the center a little bit more, just to clean this up, make it all nice and nice. So that's how you center. That's step one. Step two, opening up the piece. I'm going to take this sponge, put it back in the little web of my hand, so I kind of lobster claw it. That's what I like to call it. And then I put my left over top my right. There's a lot of potters out there that do this all different ways. This is just one way. This is just one way that I do it. But I'm going to find center of where my little hockey puck is, and I'm just going to push down. I'm not pulling it toward me at all. I'm just pushing down, and then I bring it up like this. Now I want to check and see how thick is my bottom. So I'm going to turn off my wheel, take my pin tool, shove it in the middle, pull it out. That's about, quarter, half inch, not quite a half inch, I should say, that'd be a really skinny half. About a quarter of an inch, and that's a good thickness for this size clay. If you have a bigger piece, you want a heavier, thicker bottom. Your walls are going to be thicker too. Since we're making something simple like a coffee cup or just a cylinder, this is a good size. Turn our wheel back on, Don't worry about that hole. We're going to compress the clay, meaning we're getting all those little molecules to get nice and tight together, and that's going to fill with slip. Soak up some of that extra water. Hole's gone. Next step is we're going to open up the piece. I want to get the bottom of this to a width of about 3.5 to 4 inches. Good size for a standard coffee cup. So I'm taking my fingers and I'm hooking the inside and laying these on the bottom, but I'm not going any deeper, and I'm just pulling it out toward myself. Not too fast, not too slow, keeping in time with the wheel. Now it looks something like that. Don't worry about those ridges. You can take your sponge or just your fingers and move just ever so slightly back and forth. This is called compression. Clay loves compression. Compress as much as you're able because it will prevent little S-cracks and other cracks from happening later on. So there's our bottom. Good distance. Now we're going to pull up the walls. This is where your left hand, at least on a wheel that spins counterclockwise, your left hand is going to be doing most of the work, and it's kind of happening right in front of you. Fingers are going to be on the inside, thumb on the outside, and your right hand is here to support this thumb and to have a little extra water. Not that much. Then what we'll do is we're just pinching and supporting and pulling up and slightly in. When you get to the top, don't squeeze any harder. If anything, just ease off your pressure. And there's your first pull. And you're looking for all these nice little ridges that's left by your fingers. If you have those, that's good. That means you're running at a good consistent. And then we're just going to pull again. Usually it only takes maybe 2-3 pulls just to get it the height you want. And then we can play with form. If you get little chunks of slip, that's okay. If you notice, and it's happening on this one, if your piece is flaring out, and let's say, I don't want it to flare out yet, it's going to flop on me and I'm going to have to start all over. You can take your hands, start towards the bottom of your piece, and just gently collar. And have it go up the sides. And this will straighten it back out enough for you to either keep pulling up the walls, play with the form, play with the shape, whatever you've got to do. So let's say, hey, that's a good cylinder. I like this. I know I want to turn it into a coffee cup. First thing is I'm looking at this ridge. Think about your lip hitting this. I want to put a nice little curve on it. So if I'm drinking coffee or whatever out of here, it conforms nice. It's ergonomic to that bottom lip. Next thing, if you want to play with form, if it's getting a little dry, don't be afraid to put a little water on it. Let's say you want to bubble it out, make it a little fat pot, a little fat boy. I might take and push out with my left, but then keep some control with my right. Travel all the way up, kind of follow through, just like if you're throwing a ball. Follow through. You might make it a little skinnier here. Keep that nice ridge. I always come back. Sometimes it gets messed up on me, so I make it all pretty. So I'm just going to play with the shape a little bit. Okay, so I played with the shape, something kind of different. I don't do these too often, and that's okay. Let's say I'm done with this piece, and I want to trim it up just a little bit before I take my wire tool, cut it off the wheel. So now I take this tool that's on a 45-degree angle, and I'm just going to hold it with my right hand, but support it with my left hand, and just trim this enough. I don't need to go trim crazy, where I take off too much clay, just some. And then I might take my finger, my sponge, make this ridge just a little less sharp, but I kind of like the profile that this has, so I'm going to keep it. Clean up my bat. There's enough water on here that when I drag my wire underneath, it'll come off just fine. So then we take our tangled up mess of a wire, and you can do this either with the wheel not moving, or if you feel like you get a cleaner cut. Some other potters, they'll do it where their wheel's slowly spinning and just pull right through.
That's a dirty wheel. Dirty. Ah. There, brand spanking new. Much more gooder.